Hello, great thinkers, and welcome back to another absolutely exciting edition of the Think Great Experience. I'm Erik Thurwanger. So glad you're joining us today because we have not only a great friend, but a true leader, and we have Dr. Amy Rudser, who is the owner of Advanced Eye Care Professionals, an optometrist, and just an amazing person who I love to listen to because in all the sessions that I've done that Amy's been in, I can always tell when these moments of greatness are going to come out because there's this buildup and I can see her wheels turning. I can hear those gears moving, then boom, we have some greatness.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm very excited to welcome my good friend, Dr. Amy Rudser, to the show. Welcome, Amy.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. That's quite the introduction. Happy to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you here. And I knew as soon as we relaunched our podcast, I told my team, I said, we got to get Amy on the show because she's going to have some great insights to share. I know that being in the medical field during the pandemic must have been quite the challenge. And so can you kind of give us a little bit of what's a day in the life of Dr. Amy Rudser like in the pandemic, as we're coming out of the pandemic in the medical field? What is that like right now?
Well, it's challenging, like it is for a lot of people, no matter what industry you're in. I mean, it's provided curveballs, no shortage of them, for all of us in different aspects. So, yeah, in the medical field, it's exhausting, to be honest. But I'm happy to see patients again. There was a section of time, in fact, yesterday, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but we were, totally booked out, ready to go. And then March 18th was the last day I saw primary eye care stuff. So regular exams, nothing that wasn't an emergency or post-op visits or things like that. And then that was the end of that. And then that was nothing really until May 11th. So that was last year in 2020. So
over a month.
Oh yeah, almost 8 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. So everything was upside down. I mean, nobody knew, what was going on. There was an incredible amount of uncertainty. I'm getting like 50 emails a day, at least just related to COVID. So it was crazy for a while. So now things have kind of sorted out a little bit more. So we're back to seeing patients. We started that on May 12th, but it was a very, restricted schedule. So we left plenty of extra time for all the extra cleaning and all of the extra protocols that we had to do. And we've evolved over time, like everybody else has, through the rest of 2020 and now into 2021. And it's about as tight as the schedule can be to still allow for all the extra protocols. So we'll see where that goes for the rest of 21, for this year. And everybody's ready for it to be done. Doctors have COVID fatigue, just like every other normal human being and everybody else on the planet. So, we're looking forward to this being a little more chill up soon.
I think everybody's finished for that flattening of the curve to happen and going back to, I don't think anything will ever be normal the way it used to be. It'll be greater. And I talk about that a lot, that we're in a transition phase right now, transitioning out of COVID. So we still got 1 foot in the pandemic, 1 foot in the transition phase. And we're all looking forward to, better times, doing things like we used to. But yeah, there'll be some adaptions that have to happen.
Oh, for sure. It was a pretty dense fog in the middle of everything there. Everything was upside down. It was not fun, that's for sure. And I think one of the things that really helped me through that, because everything was upside down. I have 2 girls and, so then it was, okay, instant, hard gear shift into distance learning, full on. Nobody knew what was going on there. That was awful. And then I'm trying to run a business with no cash flow. That was horrible. There's no other word for it. It was horrible. And there was a couple of days where I was a little bit more panicky, which is usually not in my nature, but it was hard with the insane amount of uncertainty. And it was not fun to go through that. And one of the things that really helped me, there was, I'm not exactly sure where I heard this. I wish I remembered because I'd love to give that person credit. But there was a quote that I heard, because I love quotes and inspirational stuff. It was, what do I want the end of this to be the beginning of for me? And so it got you out of this thick, dense fog that nobody knew where things were. I could tell we were going to, make it through it, but there was no clear path. And it just helped to just not try to worry about how, just start projecting as to, okay, everything's going to get sorted out eventually. So then how do I pick up from there? And that was really helpful.
I'm going to guess that mindset was huge during this time period for you.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a human being too. So it was not stellar always. But I have learned how to snap out of that pretty quickly and not stay stuck there, because that's not helpful either at all.
Well,
when you're a parent, you're right. Oh yeah. And when you're a parent and yeah, I'm a doctor. So, I've got patients that are worried about stuff. And so, then you need to lead, and they're following your example. And so you need to be an example to follow.
There's so much to balance. I mean, here you have your own clinic. So you have patients that are probably wondering, what do we do in the fog? You have a team member there helping you out that's wondering, what do I do during the fog? You have two little girls that are wondering, what is this fog?
Yes.
You're a leader in so many different capacities. And I can only imagine that staying in control of that 6 inches between the ears is so critical. But like you, as a leader, there were so many unknowns. And I think that was the hardest part of all. It's being the leader when the fog is at the thickest. And this was a thick fog, and it lasted a long time. It wasn't gone overnight, and so the stress that comes with that is amazing. When you're trying to find direction and your business gets put on hold, or, in our world, all the events that were booked for a year and a half out were postponed. That was the official term. And you just can't postpone life.
No.
It keeps going, even though I'm not going to that session, things keep happening. And I know that, I know how strong your mindset is. In fact, I think we probably just had a little edit a while ago because we lost sound. And I said earlier that when Dr. Amy Rudser gets going, there's a lot of passion that comes out, a lot of greatness. And I think you shut the internet down. So we had to reboot and pick up the show. But it was great. Just like in the leadership link, I could see the passion coming. I'm like, all right, we're getting some greatness right now. So these have been challenging times. I'm guessing when you went to school to get your degree, they didn't talk about how to run a clinic through a worldwide pandemic.
No, that was never discussed.
You know what's interesting? I wonder how many college courses for any career in that manner will start to discuss that. That you may encounter something like this.
I think it'll be interesting to see how that maybe expands a little bit in the curriculum. I don't know that it's going to be like a whole course, but there's certainly, I'm sure it'll get touched down on with, when you talk about the different code levels for different emergency stuff. That's more like acutely, whereas the pandemic's a little bit more long haul, but there's definitely going to be some adjustments made. And, I think it's a lot of people end up trying to look back and they're like, I just want to go back. I just want to go back.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's things that you might miss, and there's, but out of every single tricky situation, no matter how awful it seems, you can either succumb to the circumstances, or you can embrace the opportunity that's there. And there is always one there. It's not always obvious though. So it's hard because it's counterintuitive. But if you look for it, I promise you it's there. I promise.
I love that quote. I've heard it a few times before.
Yeah, I think that is belonging to you, Mr. Erik.
I know. Yeah, that may have come out of a couple of my books.
Yes.
But it really is. I think the perception, right? The perception right now is so critical because, as you touched on earlier, what's that end state? So many people ask, how do you make it through tough times? You've known Gina a long time. We've had health issues in the family. So it's not just COVID-19 for us. We've had cancer, cardiac arrest, or, I served in the military. And in alignment with what you were saying, we have this philosophy, point A to point B. And here we are in point A, and we don't know what point B is. And especially during the pandemic, point B was just foggy. I mean, it was overcast and foggy for months.
Mhm.
And we may not know where our point B is. We may not even know when our point B is, but we have to go there with the best attitude. And it's not
Correct.
about perfection, because
Nope.
we've all had our moments where, you either have a meltdown, or you just have the stress overload or something through all this. You have
Right.
to,
Right.
but you have to have point B in mind. And
Yes.
and you got to keep marching forward. You can't march backward. And I know
Right.
what you're saying. So many people reach out and say, I just want things to be normal again. And while there will be some normalcy back, things will always be better or greater in the future. And I love your approach on that. And having that mindset is so critical. And I can only imagine that not only did your team need it, but your patients
Right.
need it too, because who knows what they're facing, you know? We
Right.
don't know everybody's
Right.
personal
And
life going through this.
well, yeah, right. But I think the other thing that really also helps, and this, again, I'll give credit to you because this is really from the leadership link. It's really, which for those who don't know, is a deep dive into leadership from your one of your books. You just do the leadership connection, and it just each chapter you break apart, and there's so many things that come out of that. And it's like, wow, I didn't get that when I read the book. Like I thought I understood the concept, and then we do a deep dive for several hours, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow. So there's a plug for that. I've been through it twice.
I
It's amazing.
appreciate that. I didn't even ask for a plug, but by all
How
means,
about that?
anytime
It
you want
just
to plug Think Great, the mic is yours.
for leadership. It's you need to be able to tell them where you're going, right? Like,
But we need that destination in mind, point
right. And
B.
so
Yeah,
so it's like the kids in the car on the road trip. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Where are we going? Are we there yet? Like, if you're going to be a leader and you want people to follow you, they need to know where you're going and like what's going on. And
right.
that's incredibly challenging when you don't know the answer. And it changes. There was a couple times when it was first announced, okay, this is legit a worldwide pandemic, and nobody knew up from down. And so, it's changing by the hour, and
Right.
but not saying something is worse because people will fill their mind with thoughts. And, when they're panicked, it's not very positive ones. So it helps a lot to keep your team informed. And it's so critical. It made a huge difference for my team. It made a huge difference for my elementary school age kids, because there's at least something to hang your hat on, at least for now. And then you update them as it gets, more updates, more changes, more information, more clarity.
Well, you mentioned the leadership link, and one of the topics that's come up a lot is, the 4th Marine Corps leadership principle: keep your Marines informed, right?
Yeah.
And or in business, keep your people informed. And that was
Right.
tough during this time period. And I know communication is so critical for you in everything you
Right.
do, to have great
Right.
communication. And it was hard. It was hard for leaders around the world just to be able to say, I don't know what's going on right now.
And sometimes that's okay to say. It's you have to be okay with, what? Here's what I do know, and I don't have the answers right now, but I am committed to keeping you informed, and I will let you know as soon as I do. And here's the other thing: you don't always have to have the answer. In fact,
That's
your
right.
team has better answers than you do most of the time. So all you have to do is ask, but you can't just decide to ask when you don't have a built up relationship with that. If you've built up a relationship of asking for their input and then completely going, yeah, thanks, I'll just go ahead and turn my shoulder and do this my way.
That's right.
You're going to have a real hard time ending up with quality input coming in. But when you take what they say and then actually implement part of what it is, or bring them in and delegate stuff back to them for them to implement it, oh boy, you got a whole different ballgame now.
Well, you do, and that's why we have teams anyways, right? We have teams so we can work together. And I feel that during the pandemic, I think a lot of people did what you advised against, which is, keep your people informed. So some people, if they don't know the answer, they just don't say anything, and that's dangerous. You nailed it. They're going to fill their heads with some sort of info with a lack of info. And I believe it's okay for leaders, like you said, to say, I don't know right now, but I'll find out.
Right. And, and then they're like, oh, okay. And then their panic level still goes down, even though you don't know what the answer is right that second. But they know that you're going to do everything in your power to figure it out, and then let them know what's coming up when you know about it. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of direct communication. So we just doubled down on it, quite frankly, through the pandemic stuff, and that really helped.
Well, and I think that, you have to keep marching forward. You can't stay still through all of this stuff and see what happens. The fog lasted a lot longer than people think. And the fog affects not only our ability to, conduct business as normal, but it affects our ability to continue to march forward because, and this is going to be a great one, you'll love this, the fog impacts our ability to see.
I do love that.
So, I mean, really, it impacts our vision, Dr. Amy, and that's a horrible thing. I have to ask you, like, for you as an eye doctor, even, pre-pandemic or even during the pandemic, what's the greatest part of your role? What do you enjoy most about what you do?
Well, I'm very, very fortunate in I really don't go to work ever. I love what I do. And so is there a part of my job that I wish I didn't have to do? Yes, it's called fighting with insurance companies. I hate it. A capital H, it's a very strong word. I mean, every part of it, I hate that part of my job. However, the other 95% of it, I am totally in love with. The patients are amazing. So what I do mostly is primary eye care, which means, come in for your eye exam. We look at ocular health, so the health of your eyes, and also figure out if there's anything I can do to make you see better. Because as it turns out, there is a pretty significant percentage of your day that is visual.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, so it's pretty impactful to be able to help people be able to just function better with whatever their daily activities end up being. And it's never the same thing twice. Even if you compare you against you over time, your visual demands may change. And then especially when you get served up the pandemic, talk about visual demand changes, holy buckets. There's people that were on screens before, but it's a totally different deal when you go start working, remote, full time. So it's pretty cool. And then there's other stuff. That's the bulk of what I do. I also fit contact lenses and glasses and that sort of stuff, but we also do medical eye care as well. So manage chronic and acute stuff. So if you get a metal chunk of something in your eye, I can take that out. You can, anybody who has diabetes or glaucoma or, anything else, your eye is kind of the window into the rest of your body. So it's pretty impactful. If I'm
I've
lucky,
seen you get things out of people's eyes. Okay, I got to jump in here. So that reminds me, years ago, you went through the Leadership Link course for the first time.
Yes.
And it was really when we had launched the whole program. And I'll never forget, at your table, there's leaders from all different industries there.
Right.
I mean, you even had another eye doctor sitting next to you. Dr. Rob Hagerman was there.
Yes.
And both of you guys are just absolutely amazing. And in the class, one of your fellow peers, I don't know, something got in her eye, something happened. And both of you guys jump up like superheroes to save the day. And all of a sudden, I just remember you in there getting something out of her eye. And I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? And it was just awesome. Like you could see the passion in you come out when you were on call right there. And it's always good to have an eye doctor in the house when anything like that goes on. But it was great to see you just snap into it and just do it. And you had a little kit with you. It was like Batman with the utility belt. You're like the Batwoman of eye doctors.
Oh my goodness.
But that was awesome to see though. And then you just went right back into the leadership discussion.
Yeah.
You were talking like communication or something. You're like, another thing I think about communication. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. But you get to do that every day. You get to be a superhero in the medical field every day for people.
Well, that's very kind and generous. I love what I do, and it's pretty impactful to be able to get people to see the best that they can see. So I'm very fortunate that I just get to do what I love all day, every day.
Well, you love it so much. You're also involved with associations within your industry.
Oh yeah.
Vision Source.
Yep.
And you're with MOA, the Minnesota Optometric Association, which you've opened up doors for me to get in there and coach and speak with their members, which is awesome, because to a certain extent, you could say some of those people would be your competition. And yet from a leadership standpoint or goal setting or even strategic planning,
Mhm.
you've opened the door for them to become greater by allowing me to go in and meet these people. And so those open doors, I appreciate that. But it really makes me want to ask, why is leadership so important for you as an eye doctor? I mean, you've dove in on everything that we're doing. You've been through our programs, but
Mhm.
leadership is a concept I know is critical to you. But why is that such a foundational concept for you, for your business, for your life?
Yeah, well, it just, as it turns out, it impacts pretty much everything,
Yeah,
right? And so
yeah,
I think, one of the things that has come out of that is, you really did a great job at differentiating. You can have leadership training. Sometimes you
sure.
don't even get that. I never got that at school, I'll tell you that. That's all after I graduated with my doctorate, right? So this has just been more of like a personal development thing, and leadership is just part of it. And
Yeah,
so, but the point is, there's a difference between leadership training and leadership development,
that's right.
and you need them both, but they are not one and the same. There is some differentiation there, and I think one of the things that I realized going through some of the extra training and development both is I had always kind of thought about it like a checkbox, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's not that. Like, your level of achievement is seldom going to exceed your level of development. It just,
Okay,
it,
we just came up with a t-shirt right there. That was brilliant. That
well,
was, can you say that one again?
sure. So and I wish I could, I probably heard this from somewhere else. So sorry, apologies in advance if I don't give the right person the right credit, but it's really stuck with me. So if you're working on stuff, your level of achievement and success will rarely exceed your level of personal development
There you go.
and or
Because,
leadership development, because that's just part of it. So
well, it's interesting because we're all in the people business as leaders.
right,
We work with people. So it makes sense to train me at my job, but develop me as a leader so I interact with
right,
people better. I
right.
mean, really, one of the professions out there that is extremely people based is the medical profession.
Oh yeah,
You literally have, I don't, it might sound weird, you have their vision,
yeah,
in your hands. I mean,
right.
that's not a small task to take on.
No.
They're trusting you with so much.
Right. Well,
And
because
so,
there's a lot of things that could not be so stellar about that.
yeah.
So yeah, we got to cross
Well,
those off the list. So
but you're also leading your patients, right? You're making
right,
recommendations. You're saying, all right, let's assess your vision. And then you're making recommendations and they're following you. They're trusting
right,
you. I
right,
mean, that trust
absolutely.
factor is huge.
Well, I mean, I give them a compelling reason to do that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely like you said, I'm big on communication. So a lot of my patients will tell me, "Oh my gosh, nobody's ever explained that before, or nobody's ever said it the way you did, or like I've never understood it this well, or I never." Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's just how I roll. So
Well,
that's how I practice at my office. I think you should know anything that's going in your chart, whether we're going to do something immediately about it or not,
but
because it's just
you're
better
not only
patient
an
care.
optometrist, you are a teacher. That's how I look
Right.
at it.
Right.
I always, anytime I come in there, I feel like I'm getting educated. you know? But I appreciate that though, and it doesn't matter what medical professional you go to see, you don't want to
Right.
feel as a patient that you're a checkbox.
No, no. So, we're just trying to come up with solutions that don't fight with your schedule. We're trying to get stuff
Yeah.
that's more in sync, or, okay, you kind of went off the path this way. Let's get you back over here. So it's just more smooth sailing. That just helps everybody. Right.
One of the things that I don't know, maybe a lot of people listening right now know it, maybe they don't know it. But one thing that fascinated me so much that you mentioned in one of our leadership link classes wasn't about leadership, but as you were talking about what you do,
Mhm.
when you conduct eye exams, some of the
Yes.
results may allow you to realize other health conditions they have.
Correct.
Can you explain a little bit about that? Because I was fascinated. Nobody's saying to go to the eye doctor to test if you have this, but there's things that you can actually discover during an eye exam. So we may have people listening right now that are like, oh, I don't need an eye exam right now. And I'm telling you, you need an eye exam. But I'm going to let Dr. Amy tell you the more professional medical reasons for this. But it is fascinating.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of times we take a lot of our body parts for, granted, because when they're working really well, they don't hurt. I can do everything I want or need to. Yeah, why would I go see the doctor? Well, that's one philosophy. Or, you could get on the preventative healthcare train ride, which would be, okay, well, let's just make sure that this is going as well as we think it is. And if there is something that's not super stellar, well, dang, that's a lot easier to treat and figure out early on than waiting for that to, go down the train track a ways. And now we're derailing. I mean, that just requires a lot more significant and major stuff down the road. So your eyeballs are connected to the rest of you, as it turns out. And so
which is a good thing, I'm guessing.
Yeah, right. So but when you put it that way, then patients start to think about it differently. They go, oh, I guess I never realized that you could have some of these things show up in your eyes. And so, I can't diagnose everything through your eyes. That's unfair to say. That's absolutely not true. But there's a lot of stuff that does show up that can be, I co-manage patients with a number of subspecialties, and it can be pretty serious stuff that we find sometimes. So, if I'm lucky, I send one person a year, straight to the ER, do not pass go right now. And if I'm unlucky, it's more than that. So there's always people that come in, they think they're doing great, and lots of times they are, but every once in a while we find something else. And then of course they're at the time they're not so happy about the diagnosis, but afterwards they're very appreciative. Thank goodness you found that, because we were able to catch it and we did this, and now I'm much better, and now I'm managing this other thing. And I mean, you can.
So they go in to have their eyes checked. Yeah, they went in for an eye exam and you found something else. What are some examples of things that could be found that we might not associate with our eyeballs?
Well, there's a number of different things with thyroid stuff that can show up. There's diabetic stuff that can show up. There's stuff, your brain is really, your eye is kind of an extension of that. So there's things, your optic nerve plugs into the back of your eyeball, and then it goes kind of on this loop-de-loop course to the back of your head. And anywhere along that pathway, if something is not going the way it should, that will show up on one of the tests on a, preventative eye care exam. And so if that's the case, then sometimes I send people for MRIs. But we can catch stuff, and then, they're incredibly grateful. So that's not every day. I'm not saying that to scare people, but the more to be, just reassuring. Look, there's a lot of stuff that we can figure out before you have symptoms of it. So it's, there's a number of different systems that can kind of, there's cholesterol stuff that shows up there. There's heart stuff. There's, it's not, I can't diagnose any of that, but I can certainly refer you to another subspecialist to get that checked out.
So I like that you give us the terms we can understand, connected through the loop-de-loop system.
Right.
So that I get. I'm glad you didn't get too technical, because, I'm not going to be able to absorb all of that, but it is good to have that knowledge there. But that was something that really I never knew. So in all my years, I didn't know you could detect things outside of vision through your eyeballs. So
right. So it's a full comprehensive eye exam that we do. So excuse me.
Wow, I know I've been through one, and it's awesome. And you get the education too. And if I happen to have had something stuck in my eye, you have your Batwoman utility belt ready to go, which is always good to know.
Right.
So you got to tell me a little bit about, when you started your private practice. Mm-hmm. That's one of the greatest things, you've done. You've done many great things in your life, but that's up there as a level of greatness you achieved. And the reason I'm asking this is you started, as you said, cold.
Right.
You started your practice, just went for it. Not a surprise if you know Dr. Amy Rudser. Not a surprise, she just went for it. But I know a lot of people right now coming out of the pandemic, maybe they were furloughed, laid off, they've experienced challenges. Some people are looking to start their own business at some point. Can you tell me a little bit about when you started your practice cold and what that was like for you?
Well, so I graduated from Indiana University School of Optometry, and I'm from Minnesota originally. So initially there wasn't a lot of opportunities at the time where I wanted to be in Minnesota. And so I ended up moving to the Seattle area for almost a year, not quite. and pursued some other opportunities out there before I ultimately ended up moving back to start my own practice cold. And that would have been the fall of 2006. So right before the first crash happened.
Great
so
timing.
That's been an interesting, the economy's had some interesting curveballs in there a couple of times. So it's not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that. You have to love what you do and you have to want it bad. Just like if you're going to go through a doctorate program, it's not meant to be easy. So you got to want it to get through that. But one of the people that I met along the way, who unfortunately now is deceased, but he was a absolute just giant in the contact lens world for optometry stuff. He practiced in St. Louis and Missouri. And he said, when I was a fourth year, he said, well, so where are you going to go? What do you want to do? And I said, well, I'm not sure yet. I'm still kind of figuring that out. And he said, well, I have some advice if you want some. And I said, for sure, I want some.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, right. And so one of the things that he said was, well, why don't you pick where you want to be? Where do you want to live? Where do you want to be in the country? And decide that first. And then go find an opportunity. Or if there's not one there, then you just make your own, right? If you do it the other way around, if you find an opportunity and it's awesome, it's, for me, it would have been a practice. Oh, this practice is amazing. There's like so many things that are just, it's all wrapped up into that, but it's maybe not where you want to live, or maybe it's for sure not where you want to live. And you're like, whatever, I'll just move later. It's really a lot more challenging and, for a lot of reasons. And so he's like, you can really feel stuck and you'll actually get to a point where you just resent not only your job, but like your whole profession. I mean, you burn out, it's not good.
But it goes back to that destination, right? Know where you want to go, know your end state, your outcome, or your point B.
Right. And not to say that you still can't do it the other way and still come out just fine. I'm not suggesting that that's impossible to get through, but you're just setting yourself up for a lot bumpier road. That's all. And so if you have the choice, if you're about to branch out, start be an entrepreneur or, do something else, make sure it's something that you really, really love, because there's going to be days that are not easy, and you pick a spot that you want to be. And it's just so much better to do it that way.
I mean, maybe somebody wants to start their business in Hawaii, right? I mean, if you're going to be, you never know. You never know.
People that live there too that need a checked.
But I think that was just phenomenal advice, because we often talk about what we're going to be doing. We don't often talk about where we're going to be doing it, and that's huge.
Right.
I know when I was in the Marine Corps, I was stationed in Yuma, Arizona. After the first day, couldn't wait to leave, but I was there 2.5 years. Right. So destination is incredibly important. I think we need to share that. And think about this. Here we are struggling with a foggy environment. And granted, the fog is starting to lift, although we're going into a transition phase, which can be tougher for some people.
Right.
But I love the idea of seeing your destination. I think I just came up with the title for our show today. Seeing your destination. But it is so important. It's frustrating when you just keep feeling like you're spinning in circles.
Right. It'll get burned out doing that. That's awful.
Yeah. I just think that's phenomenal advice. And I think for anybody listening right now, probably now more than ever, to have an end state in mind is going to be huge. And this whole concept of the fog and seeing through it, it's very tough to see through it. What I love that you're saying is, if you have that destination, and I just had this visual, so I know you'll love it because you love everything visual. If you're listening right now and you have an end state in mind, I think that actually lifts you up over the fog, where it gives you clarity of where you're going.
Right.
And I spoke to so many, and I've spoke to so many business leaders since the pandemic broke out, and a lot of business leaders have great intentions and do kind of know where they want to go, right? Typically those owners or leaders, the C-suite, they have the vision. We're going to go there.
Right.
And they take this 30,000 foot view, which puts them above the fog, right?
Right.
And then they can see it. And then they're disappointed because their team can't see it, but their team's still in the fog.
Right.
So we are having major breakthroughs right now, Dr. Amy. We are sharing with people about how to look past the fog. But if you have vision on where you want to go, it really elevates where you are mentally so that you can see it. And I think that confusion, so many people have said to me, and I've said this on other podcasts, I've said this during recent trainings and development sessions, people feel lost right now.
Yeah.
You know, they're sad, they're depressed, they're stressed out. It's been a long 14 months, and it's not that it's over yet. I got to ask you about this word because I know you're a fan of it, is empathy.
Yes.
Not therapy.
No, empathy. Yeah.
And as leaders, there's a fine line between empathy and therapy. And sometimes we feel like we're in a therapist session when we're just trying to be empathetic. But how important has that word been to you right now? Just being empathetic toward people.
It's incredibly helpful if you can tap into that. It's really important, no matter what your role is, whether you're a parent, whether you're a business leader, whether you're a business owner, whether you are just you're leading a team within a bigger organization. It's incredibly powerful to have that, and it's not always easy. I was just thinking about that word the other day. I was like, dang, I really need to work on that with my kiddos. Some days I'm better at it than others, because I'm a human being too, and I'm not perfect, but that's okay. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep, moving forward and strive for progress rather than perfection. So
that's it. I love that. I love that saying too.
Yeah,
that's a biggie. But it really is, right? I mean, it is about progress, not perfection. But I think that empathy right now, I think before the pandemic, empathy was something like almost like a checkbox item, right? We should always be empathetic. Yeah, sure. Okay. Anyways, here, place this order. You know what I mean?
Right.
I feel right now it's not a checkbox item. It really never should have been.
Right.
But it's so imperative that we have that empathy right now, because there's some things that are off balance right now in everybody's work, in everybody's life, in those worlds. And I know I got to bring this up. Work-life balance. You have some interesting thoughts, and I can already see the passion coming. You have some insights on work-life balance. You may shut the internet down again right now, but can you tell us your unique thoughts on work-life balance? Because so many people feel they should strive for that.
I did too. I'll raise my hand and say I did too. For years, I was looking for it, and I was so frustrated. And I finally got to the point, I don't know, probably a year ago at least, where stop it. It does not exist. Throw it out the window. Stop seeking that, because think about it for a second. Now, I'm gonna get a little nerdy on the podcast. Balance means it's equal, right? So if it's balanced, there's not one side that's more or less than the other one. So think about what that means when you say, I want work-life balance. I get where people are trying to go with it, but it's setting you up mentally to have a faceplant fail every single time, because your brain's not going to reconcile that. It doesn't work. If you're at work, be at work. And when you're at home, be at home. Be present there. Stop being on your phone, because your kids will call you out on it. And then they'll stop calling you out on it because they're like, whatever, it doesn't even matter. You don't even hear me. Okay, now your relationships with them are just taking a serious nosedive. So stop trying to make it be balanced. When you're at work, be all in at work. And one of the ways that helped me get out of that rut and out of that mindset is to actually schedule time for it. So when I'm at work, I really am at work. And when I have something that I think about, oh shoot, I forgot this thing. Yep. I just write it down. I just have a list on my notes thing on my phone. I just literally, it's like a brain dump, right? So I just put it there. And then there's a time every week, sometimes a couple times a week, but at least once a week, where I'll go back through that list and I will just schedule time for it. And then I don't have to remember it. And then I don't have to be not present with my kids when I'm at home. And I don't have to be, because lots of times you're at work and all you're thinking about is your kids and, oh, I wish this could be better. And then you're at home and all you're thinking about is work and, oh, dang, I got to remember to do this. Stop.
It's hard for people to shut things off.
Right. So I just let that mindset finally go. And, oh, it's so freeing once you do that. So stop trying to do a work-life balance. Just be all in wherever you're at. And it's so much better.
There you go. I mean, we're getting a t-shirt made out of that one too. And it's going to say, because Dr. Amy said so. But you know what, here's what is so critical about that is, if we are striving for progress, not perfection, then having that false sense of perfection with balance, right? Everything's going to be balanced. We're striving for something we can't achieve.
Right.
It'll never be perfectly balanced.
Right.
And so as soon as we say that, we're already setting ourselves up for some sort of failure or letdown. I agree. I think that, you know, with me, there's times where we may have a client call us late at night and they ran into an issue and I can't say, well, your session's next week, I'll talk to you then.
Right.
So I will take the call, but I've got to be in that moment at that point. But sometimes work comes home with me. Sometimes the personal side. When Gina had cardiac arrest and died and then came back, I had to cancel some sessions, right? I actually canceled some sessions, and one of our clients, Nancy, actually came to the hospital and said, I'll just do my session here with you. I mean, it was awesome. So
wow.
In the waiting room where I couldn't do anything for Gina at that point. She was in ICU.
Right.
I actually sat with a client. And so, you know, they really are intermingled. You can't avoid that, but you can learn how to balance yourself through an imbalanced world. You know, and so I'm gonna have to write a new book now. But I'm gonna have you do the foreword. But that's I think that's fantastic advice. And COVID-19 has showed us how unbalanced things can be.
Right. So you just need to be strategic about it. But if you put a system in place that allows for some flexibility, I'm not saying you can't. Look, work bleeds over into my life sometimes too. Sometimes people get stuff in their eye and I got to go get it out. And so, you know, that's not going to happen at a convenient time usually. But it doesn't happen as often because I've set it up so that I can accommodate that when it does come up. And it does, but it's not, it's much easier to deal with when you have a system and you've got a spot for most of the other stuff that's actually not the house is on fire, because it's not.
Well, you know, and while things will come up, that's not always the norm, right? So I think that we have to carve out that time where when you're home, be home. When you're at work, be at work. I think there's too many people that bring work home, and there's too many people that take their problems from home into work. You know, it's funny that they don't always take the good things from home to work, but they do take the bad things, and then that disrupts the balance in the workplace because everybody knows it.
Right.
So how important right now, I know you've always been big on setting goals, but how important are goals right now for you in this phase of the pandemic and transition?
Well, they're pretty critical, actually, is what I would say about that. And I don't use that word lightly. It's really helpful to be able to figure out where you're going next. And if you set, you know, bigger goals, then you don't always have to. I think people get stuck sometimes because they don't know how they're going to get there. And you don't have to worry about that. Actually, the goal, it's, you know, this is an overused quote all the time, so I don't always love it, but it drives the point home. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey that you're on to get there. And it really is. And one of the ways that you can really incorporate that or think about that maybe slightly differently is, okay, so think about your goal as a compass. So is it getting you where you ultimately want to go? It's just a stepping stone to get there. And you don't always have to figure out the why, or not the why, sorry, wrong word. You don't always have to figure out the how. The why is important so that you stay motivated along the way.
That's right.
So you've got long-term, short-term goals. And the short-term ones really should just be the stepping stones that are getting you there. That's where you kind of drill down and figure out what you're going to do to get there. But if you use your overall goal as a compass, then you're getting to your bigger picture and, you know, where you want to go.
Well, and there's that theme again, right? We have to have a destination, especially when there's fog. And those short-term goals right now, you're right. And I talk about it all the time. Short-term goals provide us with energy, which we need right now, provide us with action, which is the steps we can move forward. And it just provides us some reasons to celebrate accomplishments right now.
Right.
You know, thinking of a 5-year goal during a worldwide pandemic, okay, that might be a little tough, even though some of us have some goals out there. But those 90-day goals, you know, here, the next 90 days are coming. We all know that. We just don't know where we'll be on day 91. But I agree. I think, you know, somebody listening right now, I think those short-term goals help to clear the fog. They're good fog busters.
Yes. Yes.
And we need more fog busters right now.
It will help. And one of the things that came out of one of the Leadership Link sessions that you had said was, because sometimes I've gotten stuck in this trap too. I usually set long-term and short-term goals at the same time, but sometimes I don't, and I get stuck in this. But the problem is if you don't do both at the same time, it's like rowing a boat, but you only got one oar. So you just go around in circles and then you get frustrated because nothing's working out. But that's because you didn't set it up to work out in the first place. So make sure when you set goals, you have big goals and you've got then, long-term and short-term, and don't get stuck in, well, I'm only going to do one of those. You want to set them both at the same time. It's really, really helpful. And if you don't do it that way, you can try it, but you'll get frustrated. So heads up on that.
Well, and I know exactly what month that was in. That was in month 3 of the Leadership Link. We go into a deep dive into goal setting and why it's so important. There's so many studies that show how setting goals, accomplishing them, it reduces stress. And the last 14 months have been stressful. But you said it best. Just a tad. But you said it best, that you have to set both at the same time. And realistically, as you have your sights set on your destination, your short-term and long-term goals should keep you on that trajectory to get there. Right. And that's why it's important to focus on both short-term and long-term. Are they working together? Because if your short-term directions are taking you east and your long-term directions are taking you north, it's going to take longer to get to your end destination.
Correct. And the other little tidbit that I'll say about that, that sometimes is sort of blown off and overlooked. And again, I'll raise my hand. I've been guilty of this sometimes too. So I'm not perfect either, but pen to paper. If you really want to type it out, that's fine. But honestly, I will tell you, there's neuroscience to back this up. If you actually have a legit pen or pencil, if you're a pencil person, pen to paper, there is stuff that happens that makes it's just different. You just have a different experience, and you're going to have a straighter line trajectory to get to where you want more efficiently. And there's other parts of the goal setting process too, but I would say that's one of the most important, because if it stays up here in your brain, it's basically just a dream then. I mean, it's in la la land. And it's okay to have dreams and have it there to start with. But if you really want to do that, or have that at some point be in your life and not look back and be like, oh, I woulda, coulda, shoulda, then pen to paper, it's magic. It helps a lot.
And if they can get a date attached to it, it just increases their commitment level.
Indeed. So that will help too.
What I'm hearing is Dr. Amy's prescription for goal setting is get it out of your head and get it on paper. Yeah.
There's lots of studies to back that up about how much more successful you are with that. So you don't have to read the neuroscience on it. You can just take my word for it. It's out there.
I take your word for it. I'll take that prescription. And I'm going to add a little caveat onto the bottom of it. If they write that goal down and attach a timeline to it, it becomes more real. And if they share it with people, like when I share a goal, I've shared goals with you before. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that, write this book, launch this program. And then Dr. Amy actually calls me out on it and says, how's it coming? I'm like, oh, shoot, I got to have a good answer for her. But that's what holds my feet to the fire. That actually causes me to be even more engaged. I'm like, well, if I tell Dr. Amy I'm going to write a book, she's actually going to ask about it. So I got to do it. Right. But that's a commitment level for everybody to share those goals. And here's the best part. Not only will your goals help decrease your fog, when you share them with other people, it'll inspire them. They may set goals to decrease their amount of fog that they're working through. Right. So it really goes hand in hand. I think that the pandemic has been hard on people for many, many different reasons. But when you really sum it up, it's just that feeling of being lost or just not in control anymore. And there's so many people who are ready to strive for greatness right now. And I just want to ask if you had some key insights to share. Somebody listening right now that says, I'm loving all this. I'm loving Dr. Amy's prescriptions on success and goal setting and going from point A to point B, all these things. What would be some key points you have for anybody just wanting to take some steps right now, but maybe they feel a little bit lost?
Well, I will say this, what you don't appreciate depreciates. Ooh. So that's a big one. And that's whether you're talking about your own health, right? Like if you don't appreciate that, if you don't put fuel and nutrition in your body that's actually productive, it's not going to end up with awesome results, and you will have depreciation in your health. It's the same thing with business. It's the same thing with your team. it flows over to lots of different sub areas, right?
Yeah.
So what you don't appreciate will depreciate. The other thing is related to more health stuff, and this is probably aptly timed for the pandemic stuff. If you don't take the time off to invest in your wellness, then you will be forced to take time off to deal with your illness.
Ooh.
Okay, so you've got to figure out a way to manage whatever stress level you're at.
That's right.
There's lots of different ways to do it. One of the things that I started doing actually right before the pandemic, so it was just coincidental, good timing on my part. I started doing meditation, and for any of you who actually know me, I'm very high energy. So meditation, I have put this off for years, because every time I asked people about it, they were like, well, yeah, you just, sit down and you just clear your mind and you don't think about thoughts. And I'm like, yeah, right. There's no way that's going to happen.
That seems impossible.
Yeah. Turns out it is possible. You just have to have a different, you have to have a good teacher for starters, and it's just, you have to have a different approach. So if you try to do the monk sort of way to do that, nothing against monks, they're amazing people, but honestly, most of us are not wired to do that. So
they're at a different level.
Yeah, it's just, it's amazing what they do, but that's not going to work for the majority of the population. And so, but I kept hearing that over and over and over with different things that I came across, that I read, that I heard on different podcasts. And so I was like, all right, I really got to figure this out. So I did. So I did start doing meditation, and now there's no day that I don't do it. It's weird if I don't do it. So I start my morning with that, and it's incredibly helpful, and that can help reduce some stress level. That's been really helpful for me. So, and there's lots of different ways you can start doing that. So
look at all those great ways to reduce stress: meditation, goal setting, sharing your goals. You've got to slow down to speed up, right? Slow down.
For sure.
And I think that during this pandemic, we have to take care of ourselves a little bit too.
Right. And everybody just needs to give themselves a little bit more grace with this. And I've had to remind myself of that. Okay, let's take a deep breath, and it's, you sort it out, and then you figure out how to go through it. So
maybe a little empathy for yourself too from time to time.
Indeed.
I think those are phenomenal tips. And I know that you have inspired people today. I mean, you have for me. I'm actually going to look into some meditation, which people know I'm kind of a spaz. I'm all over the place. So if I can do it, anybody could do it. And I'm going to try it out. I'm going to actually talk to you offline a little bit about what you're doing and how you really looked into that. But I think meditation is great. I think any chance we get to reflect is great, and think a little bit more. And while the pandemic may have caused us to slow down for a little while, we know we can push the throttle forward, and we can start speeding up towards greatness again. Not too fast, but we can take those steps. And I know you impacted many, many people today. So I took notes during this, as I knew I would. I had a blank piece of paper. I'm like, I know I'm going to take notes today. We may have to do another session just on Dr. Amy's quotes for greatness.
Well, happy to be back if you want to invite me back. But hopefully it's helpful. There's some tidbits that some people can take away that are, the inspiration you need for where you're at, wherever you're at right now with business stuff, or your family, or your personal health journey, or wherever that is. So all the best to everybody out there.
Well, thank you, Dr. Amy, for being on the show. I know you made an impact, and we look forward to having you back.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Eric.